from what I understand, cannabis oil, medical marijuana products, and medicinal marijuana has been for some time now administered to children in the educational system. Is this just in some areas in California or universally, you think?
Well, this is what's, of course, thought to be going on. Of course, there's no direct evidence in front of anybody that this is happening.
That pot's being used? Or
But
cannabis
of
is
course,
being used?
this is sort of a delicate subject in which I can't just outrightly say, yes, this is going on. What I can say is this, okay? We had a situation where Prop 215 and its intent, its original intent from its original writer, from Dennis Peron himself to the legislative intent, to everything that's followed it, has been to allow the compassionate use of medicinal cannabis, all the way up until Prop 64 that came about for recreational use, which of course we know came about so all that great tax revenue could come from this recreational income we've seen other states have.
So what did Prop 64 do to what was traditionally a normal medical use?
Well, what it did is it created a problem where Prop 215, as it stood, gave the ability for a recommendation to somebody under the age of 21 years of age for medicinal use. So if they were given a type of oil, and if they needed it in a school, for example, that doctor could give orders. And within the state, a doctor licensed within the state, giving orders within the state, is then ordering there's so much given
Like
at a
school nurse
specific
or
place.
somebody?
It could be a school nurse. That could be happening. I can't go into specifics about that. What I can go into is the fact that the state of California needs, without a doubt, legislation enacted that allows exemptions from Prop 64 for those under the age of 21 that are using cannabis products,
Oh, you skipped
oil
something here.
specifically, in schools.
You skipped something here. It was what you're saying is that it was, according to the law, it was allowed to be administered to minors in schools.
Not specifically.
Not specifically, but I mean, it was inferred to be that way.
It wasn't specifically prohibited. Under Prop 64, what I have just came to find out, literally through a lot of analysis of this law, because this law is not simple. Everybody that knows about Proposition 64, the recreational cannabis law for California, is pretty aware that it's stepped on our medicinal laws in a huge way, in a way that it's going to change everything. Within Prop 64, there is a specific prohibition against use in public facilities, as in a public school. Okay, public schools are in part funded by the federal government. Kids using oil in a public school more than likely would be disabled, we would think, correct? Okay, so more than likely would be in special education. Again, correct? So more than likely would have an individual education plan known as an IEP. That type of student gains funding through the federal government for these students. So effectively, you've got students that are funded in part by the federal government to attend school and then receiving it possibly, more than likely, oil, different types of cannabis oil. Of course, this needs to happen. We're not a state that is a follower. California is a state that's a leader. So we've got a situation in California where we don't have the legislation intact and we need to have it immediately. So if indeed oil is being given in school, there's legislation there that covers the state. So the state's funds aren't at stake. Under Prop 64, suddenly I'm informed there's a problem. I do my research and find out, lo and behold, there is a problem there. And the only way to address it now is to create an exemption. So we do have legislative models for this actual legislation that already exists in other states. As I started working on one specific case, Proposition 64 passed. Now, between the time that a dispute arose and now, Proposition 64 passed, And that is what made me question whether or not Proposition 64 had any implications on the educational system and whether or not kids in school can actually get their oil without any interruption. And I saw that Prop 64 has more than the ability to interrupt a child being able to get their access to their oil, which could cause a seizure and who knows what.
Would you be interested in having people contact you whose lives have been affected by this new Prop 64 law and to perhaps take their case histories to help bolster your argument?
No, most definitely. I believe that our argument
Should contact you.
definitely, most definitely contact me. I appreciate any input. I believe that the argument is so strong, it's undeniable. I'm in a situation right now where I've got a case that would require an action against the state and an action that also would go to the U.S. Department of Justice. So how possibly, as a non-attorney representative for a child with a disability, do I file these two actions when one of them is going to go to a federal entity that is going to come back and look at my state and say, hey, California, you're dispensing oil in public schools and you don't have legislation for that. You don't have regulation for that. So it's not something where I think that the state of California should allow a free-for-all. It's something where I believe that there needs to be some type of resolution created, and that's what we're actually drafting and proposing. And we're going to put on the table quickly a resolution that allows for regulation to be put in place for the delivery of cannabis oil for children in public schools, private schools, and developmental disability centers.